Welcome in to the Hot Read podcast for Wednesday, June the 5th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I'm joined as always by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm running off of a extra large Dunkin's iced coffee today and a little bit of Monterey Jack shredded cheese that I had in my fridge. That was my little snack post minicamp. So vibes are really high. We're nutritionally, I am just at the peak of my performance.
Nutrition levels are low, vibes are high, is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. I mean, that's all you ever need, really, is just a nice coffee and some shredded cheese in your life, and you're ready.
Who needs
to take
macros
on the world
when you have vibes? That's
exactly. That's what I think.
That's the take.
Exactly.
We're talking Titans mandatory minicamp. JT, you and I both there today in the flesh. I snuck JT in again. They're letting him come now. I'm not just sneaking him in. It's not that easy. Don't just show up to practice. They won't let somebody in. But we watched mandatory minicamp today. Was in the bubble because the rain had quit by the time we got there, but the fields were very soggy. So we moved indoors, which sometimes is nice and sometimes is not nice for those of us in the media. You can only stand on one sideline. It's very cramped, but the players are also sometimes forced to be much closer to you than they are on the outside field. So it's a give and a take. It's nice every once in a while, but generally speaking, not the craziest about it. However, a lot came from today, JT. I was kind of wondering, at what point is this going to be redundant? Are we going to have a lot to talk about? No, there's a lot to talk about today. We have a ton to get through. We've got a potpourri of different training camp notes and nuggets from today. Some observations on your end, some from me. We focused on some different things today, trying to divide and conquer. Some players that may or may not have been holding out back with the Titans. Who would have known? So I watched a lot of the edge players, so some thoughts on that group, and then a bunch of clips from the biggest storylines, interview clips today from Brian Callahann's availability at the podium, Will Levis's availability at the podium. Josh Wiley spoke with us a bit, and then Elijah Molden and Rashad Weaver both talking to us about this new defense, a defensive episode for you today, because I've got a lot of thoughts. We've not really broached the topic of defense a whole lot, JT. It's been a lot of talk about the offensive line and the quarterback and the running backs and the wide receivers. Let's talk some defense today, because the Titans do have a lot of new moving pieces on that front. They have a new defensive coordinator who has fantastic pedigree, and it sounds like this group is going to be operating significantly differently on defense than they have in the past. So a lot of thoughts on all of that coming up in just a moment. But before
breaking news as well. So
that's cool. What just happened? What happened?
Deandre Sweat finally signed right now, literally 30 seconds ago. Well, yeah.
Exactly. People were wondering, considering he's not been at practice. The horror, the terrors of missing practice in May. We'll discuss that as well. He is in fact in the building, obviously, because he just signed. That's what he was busy doing today. He's hammering out the contract. All of that and more in a moment. But first, if you're with us live today, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. If you're watching on Twitter or on Facebook, leave those places. Head on over to YouTube and search Broadway Sports Media. You'll find the Broadway Sports Media YouTube channel, and you'll find this live stream going on right now on that channel. Click on that version of the live stream and hop into the comment section to join William and Shrike and Shane and Justin, all of you guys already with us in the comments. We appreciate y'all being here. Head on over to those comment sections, to that comment section, and leave your comments for us, your thoughts, questions, queries, opinions, hot takes. We want to hear all of it as we go through notes and what we saw today from the Titans mandatory minicamp. All right, JT, let's dive into our general notes from the day. A handful of guys not spotted out there. Colton Dowell once again, Shaheem Carter, Anthony Kendall, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Devondre Sweat, TK McClendon, and Jeffrey Simmons not out on the field today. Now, we did hear later from Brian Callahann at the podium that everybody is in attendance. Of course, the next 3 days are the mandatory portion of the spring training that the NFL teams are going through right now. So you incur a pretty significant fine if you're not in the building during these 3 days. Every single Tennessee Titan on the roster is there, just some of them not out on the field because they're inside working through some injury or rehab process. on the topic of T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons in particular, Brian Callahann said that they are both working through short-term things, potential to see them later this week or next week, and certainly both will be ready to go well in advance of training camp later in July, he said. So not a huge sweat, no pun intended, on those guys, in my opinion. Again, folks that weren't high on T'Vondre Sweat right now are going to tell you it's a big deal that he is already missing time, this, that, or the other. He's too big, he's too injury prone, whatever. And folks that liked T'Vondre Sweat pre-draft are going to tell you not to worry about it. Ultimately, I don't see a reason to worry yourself about it until it becomes a thing when you get close to having to play in August, in September. Like, they're going to be very precautionary with anybody and everybody right now. Is it ideal that I think Brian Callahan literally said it's not ideal to not have him out here during this portion. Of course it's not. He's a rookie. He's trying to absorb as much as you possibly can, and getting physical reps, getting it in your body, that's a part of that. But he's still, I'm sure, in all of the meetings and a part of the install. And so from a mental standpoint, I don't think there's any issue there. All I'm going to say is in the spring, I'm not really concerned about anybody missing significant time. That concern meter becomes a thing when we get to July and get to August. So I'm just going to continue to pump the brakes on him and on any of these guys missing time. You know who didn't miss time, JT, today? One DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver, was out there. Strange approach to holding out, which I've been reliably informed he is potentially doing. Wants a new contract, wants to be traded, something along those lines. Well, I don't know why he's doing this, being at camp, if those are the things that he is interested in. That is certainly strange. I, for one, was surprised to see him out there today.
Yeah, I mean, I was too, frankly. We've talked about so much, or not us, but there have been talks recently about how DeAndre Hopkins is wanting a new contract. He may get shipped off to Cincinnati for T. Higgins in a possible deal. There's a lot of things going on with him, but guess what? He showed up today. It was funny, just seeing him right there with us as he started to stretch, and even after that, not even just stretching, but going through all of the drills, doing all of them, participating with the rest of the team. It's a very interesting strategy for a guy who is apparently holding out, for sure.
Yeah, of course he's not actually holding out. I think all of the talk last week was born of laziness and boredom. Laziness and boredom. I think laziness comes first, frankly, because there are things to talk about if you are just even a little bit creative. But boredom and laziness are certainly the concerns here. And there he is making a one-handed catch today on the Tennessee Titans practice field on July 4th. Or on June 4th. I don't think there's any concern there. Does he potentially want a new contract? Probably. I mean, he's on the last year of his deal, but that's not keeping him from being a contributing member of the Tennessee Titans. What else, JT? We'll take turns here. You go ahead and just empty your notebook. What were your thoughts as you watched today? We both were jotting some notes down. What did you see that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, just coming back to kind of that conversation about Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat not being there, like you said, I'm on the same boat that it doesn't really concern me. I think even we asked Brian Callahann today in the media about, how does that feel not to have that guy out there? Do you feel like you still, without a Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat out there, have a good idea what your defense is going to be? And to that, right, he answered yes, like more or less. He knows what he has on defense, and he knows those guys, Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons, and kind of the outside grand scheme of it all. He knows what they bring to the table. So no, they're not really missing a lot. But to your point, Sweat is a rookie, and he's much like the other rookies, has to get this experience at some point. And we've been talking about it at the media availabilities. T'Vondre Sweat has not been there. That doesn't mean that he has not been with the team on the days that we have not been there, right? Like that's just something that we don't know. So I'm not gonna take just the days that we are there as gospel, right?
It's like object permanence with the media.
Exactly.
If we don't toddlers. See it, it does not happen. It does not
exist. Correct. Yeah. So I like you said, I think I'm there with you as well on that boat. Not a big deal in my book. DeAndre Hopkins, like you said, he's there. Great. As well, another big time name for the Titans as well, L'Jarius Sneed, our first sighting of him there this week. he wasn't there last week at OTAs or wasn't out on the practice field, but
Right.
today he was
there. We didn't see him
yeah,
practicing. Yeah.
we walked in and the first person that I saw was L'Jarius Sneed. I said, oh, there you go. There he is. But as it was reported by TD and a couple other people, he wasn't participating in the rest of the drills like the rest of the team. He was working off to the side. That's something Brian Callahann also commented on, just like in Kansas City, the load management that he needs for him to be healthy for an entire season. That's kind of what they're doing here as well. So I'm not too concerned about that either. And then just a couple of guys that really stood out to me, especially in the 7-on-7s and things like that. First of all, Ryan Stonehouse was out there. He looked pretty good. If you notice on from the videos that we took of him, there's seemed to be nothing on his leg like that. So he is looking healthy and strong, and that looked good for him.
And by the way, if folks want to see those videos, they are currently playing. If you're just listening to the program, you are missing out on the visual portion. We've got, especially during these camp days, folks, we do a lot of work behind the scenes to bring you the sights and sounds on your screen that you can see with your own eyeballs. You just got to tune in on YouTube. So continue, JT. But I wanted to make sure people knew what they were missing if they were just listening right now.
And then kind of going into those 7-on-7s, there's a lot of guys that stood out. First of all, Roger McCreary looked really, really good today. There was specifically a play down the field where he was going up against NWI, and he looked like a superstar out there, making a huge athletic breakup there. Cheeto also really active. They both looked like they were flying around the field today. Interesting to note that I think, Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons also looked really good. And when Cedric Gray was able to get in there, he caught my eye as well, making a couple pass breakups as well. So, good to see all three of them out there. And Brian
Can we
Callahann,
talk about that for a moment? Because, Murray and Gray both getting relatively limited action in practice. You're seeing more of Jack Gibbons out there in individual and in team drills. For Murray, he's a veteran. I'm not, that doesn't concern me. You could argue it's a good thing potentially that he's, not, I'm not saying good thing is strong, but like you could argue as somebody that is trying to return to play, he is fine and not being out there a ton this spring. With Cedric Gray, rookie 4th round pick out of North Carolina, he's your new middle linebacker. You don't have him out there now. We don't really have, you have him out there. You don't have him out there as the primary guy in that starter role now when we were talking about, hey, this guy may be the green dot option for them when he was drafted. I don't see how you can spin that super positively. Now, I'm sure a part of it is just them ramping him up and not trying to put too much on his plate too early. But when Jack Gibbons is being the prime, like doing the thing out there that you are hoping to see Cedric Gray do, certainly by the beginning of the season and in the offseason portion, you want to see him start to take on that mantle, and we're not seeing it yet. I'm not going to go crazy on freaking out about that today on June 4th, but if by August 4th, it's the same situation in terms of utilization out there on the practice field, it's going to start to become a thing for me.
I think I'm with you there as well. I mean, even going further, Brian Callahann had a lot of complimentary things to say about Jack Gibbons today, especially that, he has taken on, the biggest thing I think is what he said is he's taken on a leadership role on that defense, which I think is something that we really didn't expect. A couple other things that were pointed out, despite his maybe athletic limitations, he's very smart on the defensive side of the ball, taking on that, being able to dish out those plays to the rest of the defense and communicate that for this team. And Brian Callahann was very complimentary of him. So I think, we had this idea that Cedric Gray may just be his role given from the get-go, but it sounds like, from what we've heard from Brian Callahann and Jack Gibbons himself, like, it's not a sure thing. We have to remember that, Cedric Gray, we liked him coming out, but then again, he's a 4th round rookie, right? Like he's a 4th round guy, it may take some time for him to fill into that role. And it sounds like that they're, like you said, he's a rookie as well. And they may not be trying to rush him in to that role as quickly as we may have thought.
Or hoped, right? And this just hit me, JT. The graph that, and I think we showed it on the show during last season. Our buddy James Foster over at No Flags Film put together a periodic video series where he's ranking Titan starters in tiers. Remember when he split Jack Gibbons into two different people? It's Jack Gibbons on the x-axis and Jack Gibbons on the y-axis.
Yes.
And Jack Gibbons on the y-axis, going north and south, getting upfield and downfield, was a significantly higher rated player than Jack Gibbons on the x-axis, running sideline to sideline, because he just is not athletic enough to hang with guy. Like, he can't establish the edge. He can't get to the corner if a running back or a wide receiver or a tight end that's particularly athletic takes off and runs around him. That's just, he is limited athletically in that capacity. He can't do it. And in this, if I'm playing devil's advocate for hit, like if we come to realize in August, this guy is going to at least start the season as a starting linebacker option for them, will it be all that shocking that this coaching staff, Darnell Wilson, who we're constantly now hearing, and we're going to hear more about it later from Rashad Weaver and Elijah Molden, about how this defense is going to be really aggressive. The guys in the box are going to be moving downfield. You're going to get after the quarterback. It's going to free up guys to play with violence. Again, getting north and south. Jack Gibbons is a north and south guy. Like, if you're trying to get the best of Jack Gibbons, that's what you're having him do. Now, the counterpoint to my counterpoint here isn't that what Kenneth Murray is here to do? Like, isn't that the kind of the point? And why if then why both of them? If you need a guy in coverage, and neither of these guys, again, running sideline to sideline, you don't want either of those dudes doing that thing. But maybe they think, I'm trying to circle this square right now, man. Maybe they think they don't need necessarily a guy to, I don't know. Maybe ultimately it may just be Cedric Gray's not ready. Yeah. But the reason I'm trying to make it a maybe not Cedric Gray is not ready take, but a Jack Gibbons better than we think take, is because of the way that Brian Callahann talked about him today, and then the fact that, little peek behind the curtain, Titans PR threw Jack Gibbons at us today. Like, we've been requesting players to speak to on the side, and it was a big thing pre practice today. We're in the media workroom, and they come and they tell us who we're getting. And we all are like, Jack, who did anybody ask for Jack Gibbons? And nothing against Jack Gibbons. We didn't request him because we didn't think he'd be a relevant member of this, like a super relevant member of this team right now, at least. So for them to have thrown him at us, and then for Brian Callahann to speak about him the way that he did, and then to see him get a lot of practice time, it's like there are dots there that could be connected. I'm not saying that they should be, but they can be.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's something that's going to be interesting to watch, not only this week, but as we get into July and August, as we begin to ramp up in pads. And once again, like, everything should be taken with a grain of salt. I think Brian Callahann today said the line, anybody can look good in shorts, right? Like,
right.
Like we're talking about storylines that could totally
we got that clip
flip
from him earlier.
Could totally flip 180 on its head, right? When the pads get on and we start to say, oh yeah, Jack Gibbons in shorts in this situation could be really, really good. And then he puts the pads on, and we remember we see the same Jack Gibbons that we saw in London, where Zay Flowers was cooking him every single play. Like, there's a very different Jack Gibbons we could see come a month and a half from now.
Right. Let me empty my notebook real quick, and then we'll get to all of our media availability clips that we've got spliced together for you. Working on punt return duty, just if people are interested, who is in that running. Mason Kinsey, Kieris Jackson, Kyle Phillips, and Jaquan Jackson were the four primarily rotating at the punt return position. We're going to talk later about how Treylon Burks could potentially be a returner and be a special teams player. A lot of hubbub about that today. We'll get to that in just a moment. Roger McCreary, like you said, an impressive day. Saw a couple of really nice plays on his part. Although Jaquan Jackson, rookie, 6th round receiver, had a pretty impressive contested catch. It was an out-breaking route on the right side of the field. The throw, I think, was a tick late, but it didn't really. It was a contested catch because the throw was a little bit late, or behind, or both. Not a great sight line from where we were standing, but it was a contested catch. McCreary was all over him, and Jaquan, not a big guy, not a contested catch, not known for the contested catching, did the contested catching. So that was impressive. And again, like, I'm not trying to start the Jaquan Jackson hype train. I've been trying to derail it, in fact, but that was a tick in his favor.
Maybe maybe not put as much coal into the engine of it. Maybe
we're not getting on the train, but like I'm flipping through the brochure. Yeah. I'm flipping through the pamphlet. Like I'm taking a look.
I see it as an option, right? Like as the different lines that I can take on my hype, my hype train kind of destination, my travel. It's one of the
your itinerary. Your
stops. I could get on
your ports of call. The Jaquan Jackson Island might be one of the ports of call for your cruise.
It could, yes, correct.
Okay, a lot of mixed metaphors there. What else here? Calvin Ridley. He did what you meant. You mentioned this to me. I didn't actually see it. You saw it, but you saw Calvin Ridley walking off with traders in the middle of 7-on-7s. Was he walking particularly gingerly? I know he walked out of the bubble. I don't think there's anything.
I mean, it's hard for me to say. It was more. I'm not too concerned about it. I just thought it was interesting to note that it was pretty early on in the 7-on-7 as well that Calvin Ridley exited the bubble. Maybe that. Well, we'll have to see the rest of the week, right? As we go on, if we see him out there tomorrow, maybe it's just a load. It's a load management thing. If he's not there tomorrow, that might be something. A little bit, but that was something that I noticed, him as I was watching 7-on-7s, I turned around and there goes Calvin Ridley out the door. And I was like, that's interesting.
We'll keep an eye on that tomorrow. Yeah. NWI, he spike balled a wide open pass, which isn't important, but I just thought it was funny. And I wish we could have been filming it because it was entertaining. He was wide open, double hands, just spike balled it. So NWI. A little bit of offensive line talk here. And as Kenneth says in the comments, John Ajokwu, dark horse right tackle contender. We've got a clip from Brian Callahann we're going to play in just a couple of minutes where he talks about John Ajokwu. But just in terms of trying to figure out who's playing in what position and what the pecking order is. And again, I don't think it's set in stone yet. I don't think even the Titans know. They have probably some inclinations of what they're thinking is going to happen, but they're going to let, once they get in pads, to determine who wins and loses spots. That's not a predetermined thing. Of course, the left side of the offense, like we know who the starting center is. We know who the starting left guard is. We know who the starting left tackle is. Right guard and right tackle are up for grabs, and the backup spots are up for grabs. I think that everything else is not super set in stone right now. And what we saw today during some of the team portion, again, not in pads, and this portion, not even really wearing helmets. Only a couple of guys out there wearing helmets for this. You had Jalen Duncan, second-year player, rookie last year, 6th-round rookie out of Maryland at right tackle. And you had Dylan Radins at right guard. And then you had Daniel Brunskill at center. Now, that wasn't with the ones. When the ones transitioned in, I noticed that it was Sadiq Charles, newly acquired Titan, who we spoke to afterwards a little bit. You spoke to him, I think, JT. I didn't get a chance to hear from him. He was at right guard, so Sadiq Charles at right guard with the ones, and then John Ajokwu at right tackle with the ones. Now, let's just kind of talk this through, because I spoke to Zach Lyons on a football show last week about it a little bit, JT. He was asking me, like, what if I had to today guess what the pecking order is with these guys at different positions, what I think it is. I am still of the opinion, despite what we saw today, I am still of the opinion that I think the favorites, maybe not large favorites, or prohibitive favorites, but like a majority percentage for the right tackle and right guard positions belong to Dylan Radins and Nicholas Petit-Frere. Thank you. Nicholas Petit-Frere. I'm saying thank you to the spreadsheet that I had pulled up. Thank you, spreadsheet. Nicholas Petit-Frere at left or right tackle, Dylan Radins at right guard. I think that is what, how do I phrase this? I think those are their jobs to lose. That's the right way to phrase it. They are the leaders in the clubhouse to earn those positions, I think. And I think their ideal backups at center, I'm pretty certain it's Daniel Brunskill. I mean, they had him doing it today. He fits the mold of a player that would work well there. He's a veteran who he knows he's going to know everything that is thrown at him. He's seen a lot in the NFL mentally from a quarterback of the offensive line position. He's going to be able to do that thing. So I think he's their ideal backup center to back up Wood Cushenberry. And then I think Sadiq Charles, who is newly acquired, is their ideal swing guard, their swing interior guy. And you may ultimately have Brunskill and Charles fighting for who is the primary swing interior lineman. But if I had to guess, I think Brunskill is their backup center and Charles is their backup guard. We'll revisit that take in a couple of weeks, I'm sure. And then at tackle, again, I think it is MPF's job to lose at right tackle. I think they brought in, actually traded for, Leroy Watson from Cleveland to be a swing backup tackle, maybe primarily a left tackle, just because correct me if I'm wrong. We saw Bill Callahann play him at left tackle briefly last year, and it was serviceable. It worked, right? That's
Yes.
a part of the reason why they went and got him in the first place. And then John Njoku, we saw him with the ones at right tackle today. So am I saying there's nothing to that? There is something to that. The idea that they're giving him a good hard look as that starting tackle position. I don't know, JT. If you had to guess today who it is, are you going to Njoku or are you going Petit Frere?
I'm still going NPF, but like if I was setting the odds, I'd probably put NPF at plus money. Like the more time,
it's like a 60-40 odds kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, like I'd put it at plus 100, like even. Like it's really, I think it's starting to, as he misses more and more time and is not out there with these guys, getting this chemistry, working with the rest of these guys, right? I think that it gives more opportunity for guys like John Njoku and Jalen Duncan. It gives these guys who are out there all the time with these guys more kind of repertoire and repetition with Bill Callahann. It kind of shows him a lot more. And ultimately, if he continues to miss this time, we'll have to revisit once we get to training camp. But as he misses more and more time, I wonder how ready he might be for the season.
Yep. William asking in the comments, are you allowed to tell us where the players were lining up? I believe, yes, we are. So if not, too late. But yeah, again, there are some of these guys that I think that can play interchangeably. We know generally who the potential tackles are. We know it's Radens and it's NPF and Njoku and Jalen Duncan. I really don't think they see Radens as a guard right now. So if that changes, we'll see them have him play outside. But based on what we've seen, I think they have him as an interior player. So just there's all of that. And again, now Williams got me second guessing. I'm gonna go back and check the rules. Hopefully we didn't just break them, but if we did, oh well. It's May. They're liable to change these things anyways. Let's talk about the edge players, JT. And I spent the vast majority of my day dialed in on these edge guys, a group that has three players a lot of people are going to know, and we've got footage of those three guys. We can start with the Rashad Weaver footage, and these are compilations of what we saw today during the filming portion. General notes here, Harold Landry and Arden Key, not surprisingly, they're the vocal leaders of that group. They're the most engaged from a leadership, practice, mentality position. That's those guys, and that's not surprising given their veteran status. There's one player in the edge group who we don't have footage of to show you today, JT, but I couldn't take my eyes off him all day long, and it's similar to the way I felt about him last offseason at times. Man, Thomas Rush is going to make me act up. I think he's a UDFA signing last year. A lot of talk about how if I'm not mistaken, he was the highest paid UDFA contract the Titans brought in last offseason. And so that led a lot of us to believe, in accordance with how we saw him perform in practice at times, hey, this guy may sneak onto the roster and be their fourth, fifth, sixth edge player. He ultimately did not make the 53 last year, although I'm pretty sure my final projection I had him in. I think it was close. He looks different this year. He looks bigger. There's no doubt he has added some size. And the way that he practices, it's just in that entire group, he has been the most, I'm not going to say the best because they're not in pads, it's limited, but he plays with the most ferocity. He's got the biggest punch. He seems to be playing with the most power. He just pops off the screen, pops on video and in person. He stands out significantly when you're watching him. And even more important than that, perhaps, is the fact that when you watch his coaches and the other players in his position, like a big part of parsing what does and doesn't matter is see how the other guys react. How are they nonplussed by something that you find exciting? Then it probably doesn't really matter. If the players and the coaches are going crazy over something, it probably matters. And every time he would do something today in practice, every other rep he had teammates egging him on. He had his coaches saying, hell yeah, that's how we practice. Like, it was a lot of encouragement and praise on that front. So, man, I think he is likely to make the roster. If I had to guess today, a long road to go before the cut down to the final 53. But it it's something that really stood out to me is Thomas Rush. Now, that's not to say the other guys didn't look good, and we can show Landry and Key here in the background as well, JT. With Weaver, who we just showed, he's in an interesting position. You know, everyone assumes he is the third option at the edge position for this team, given his status as a player that's been here 4 years, going on 4 years. The other guys just not really being all that proven. And yet, the way that he practices, I was talking to Braden Gall about this today. It doesn't do it for me. It's like I want him to be more in it than he is. And I don't know if it's him just kind of halfway doing, like, you know, not giving 100%, out there practicing with 80%, or maybe he's just not as powerful as some of these other guys. I don't know. I'd have to ask him whether or not he's going full bore or not. But the speed element of his game is what he's going to have to win on. That's my ultimate takeaway, is that I don't think he has the power profile, and this is not particularly new, but he has, you know, he's trimmed down. We've talked about that this offseason. I think he's going to have to win with speed to power and not power. And he's going to have to use that big, long, athletic frame to just get upfield in a hurry, be bendy as heck, get around to the quarterback, swing around and, you know, grab an ankle or whatever it may be. He's going to have to be a winner with his bend around the edge and with the speed. I don't think it's going to come from a power standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to Rashad Weaver today. You know, we talked about, hey, man, like you look different. And he kind of joked with us and said, oh, you know, like, you know, it's kind of some of that baby weight or something like that. You know, he kind of joked with us, but then he said he didn't really feel different. But when he looked on the tape, like he felt way more explosive. Or he looks more explosive to himself when he watches the tape back. And I think that's something that it could contribute to, you know, his success this year. We talked about, you know, being more of that guy, you know, from years past where he had to be kind of that power rusher. Now he can win with that bend and finesse. And then I think Arden Key is also in for a massive year as well. I mean, if he and Rashad Weaver can kind of be that 2-man rotation around these guys, right? And not have to rely on one or the other the entire time. I think that they can be a really nice complement to a Harold Landry, who we expect to be that guy playing 3 downs.
Yep. So we can move on to a handful of these clips and storylines, and let's start with some of the Callahann media availability. JT, let's pull up those clips. This first one is Brian Callahann talking about Treylon Burks, and this is the clip that really rustled some feathers online. It got a lot of attention, I think, for mostly the wrong reason. Let's play it first, and then we can talk about it. If you have been with us throughout this offseason process, you know that last week, Treylon Burks could do no wrong. He was fantastic. He was, you know, the practice player of the week, practice player of the month. He was looking like Terrell Owens out there, according to Calvin Ridley. His players, his teammates and coaches alike were very complimentary of him. The praises were flowing at a rate that was almost suspicious. Like, is this a coordinated plan to hype up Treylon Burks? Like, are they really trying to just love on this guy and get his confidence back? Well, today a comment from Brian Callahann, when asked about whether or not Treylon Burks would be a contributor on special teams, has led some to believe that his career is now over. Here was that clip.
He's going to have to contribute. You know, you only get so many hats on game day, and if he's one of those guys on game day, we're going to have to find a place for him, because those special teams guys like him should be great special teams players on top of it, just because of his size and speed. And so the gunner thing is something I think he's very capable of doing. There might be some more roles for him in the other phases as well. But yeah, anytime you're not the full-time starter, you're going to have to contribute somewhere on game day. And I think Trey's attitude and approach to special teams has been fantastic. And so I'm excited to see what he could do for him. I think he's an asset on special teams.
Now, Twitter took this and ran with it is not strong enough. They took it, attached it to a rocket, and shot it to the moon. Eagles Twitter got a hold of it very early. Thank you so much for AJ Brown. Can't believe this was AJ Brown's replacement. Can you believe this guy was running to replace AJ Brown? Now he's a gunner on special teams. A lot of people in the fantasy community saying Treylon Burks' stock is dead. He's never it's never going to work. And then a million people in the comments saying, trade this guy already. Please trade him. Just deal him. Send him to my team or another team where he can prosper. A lot here, JT. First of all, people saying that this team is out on him. You clearly weren't paying attention last week if you think that they are out on him, the way that they talked about him so glowingly for a week plus. That's not something that is like, unless they were just lying and suddenly decided today that, you know what, never mind, we're gonna change our tune. That's not the case. Two, the idea that they've been really wishy-washy on him. They're a little bit all over the place in terms of like what they, the way they talk about him versus what his role is going to be. And I think that's just them trying to pump him up, but then also being realistic with the fact that, hey, this guy is wide receiver 4. So for Brian Callahan to come out at the podium and say, hey, when you are not a starting player at any position, in order to justify a 53-man roster game day roster spot, you're going to have to be a contributor on special teams. And hey, by the way, I think Treylon, the way that he plays, the athletic build he has, he's going to be a really good special teams player. So that's going to be a good thing for us. And you when you're not a starter, you have to do that. That's not news. Like if you're not a starter on any team at any position, like this is the whole reason Kyle Phillips is on the rocks, in our opinion, right? This idea that, well, if he can't contribute on special teams and he's just a slot receiver, the versatility is so low, he's not going to be able to play on Sundays. You can't burn a roster spot on that kind of guy. If Kyle Phillips was the team's bona fide punt returner, like folks thought he was going to be, I don't think we'd be having this conversation and be like, well, he's the punt returner. He's going to make the roster. He might be wide receiver 6 or 7, but he's going to make the roster because they need him on special teams. With Treylon Burks, it's not that special teams is not going to be his primary role. That's not what's being said here. And I think folks are losing their minds that Treylon Burks is now being reduced to a gunner. No, he is your wide receiver 4. And as wide receiver 4, as look at NWI over the years, he's a constant on special teams and is playing in a rotational capacity on offense. That's the way that Treylon Burks is going to be utilized. And if that changes your opinion, this clip changes your opinion today on what Treylon Burks is, on where he is in your mind, from going from a first round pick, starting caliber, breakout potential caliber wide receiver, potential wide receiver 1, 2, and now suddenly, he's reduced to a gunner and a wide receiver 4. You've not been paying attention. If that change happened today, I don't know where you've been, but you've not been focused on this situation, because we have known, unless you thought the Titans were signing Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd in the offseason to come in and be depth pieces, you're not tuned in. JT, does this make sense? Like I don't think what Brian Callahan said today was at all controversial, and yet it's a soundbite that we hang on every negative and positive word during the spring with every fiber of our being, and it is overreaction season, and so people are overreacting.
Yeah, I think it is an overreaction, right? Because to your point, he isn't a starter. He lost that starting spot when Tyler Boyd was signed, right? Once Tyler Boyd was signed, you knew that Treylon Burks did not have a starting wide receiver role on this team. And therefore, he talked about it. There are other ways to use this athletic, huge, big, and fast player. And one of those that they tried out today was him as Brian Callahan said, as a gunner, that he can have some special teams usage. Now, is that the best way to use him? I think that can be debated for sure. Having him out there as one of those role players on special teams, it could be up for debate. However, I do think that, we talked to him as well, we talked to Brian Callahan about possibly being used as a kick returner or in the new kick return rules. I think that is a possibility where you could see Treylon Burks make an impact with this team. And that's exactly what he said, right? Brian Callahan said that, if you're going to be on the starting roster, there's only so many hats that you can have on a starting roster in the NFL. And if you have one, you better have a way to contribute positively to the team. And, Treylon Burks right now being that wide receiver 4, he may have to have some of those moments where he's contributing on special teams before contributing on special teams, and then also having those designed looks before we start seeing him as a true wide receiver who is in the fold all the time.
Right, exactly. And so we can leave it at that, because I know a handful of people are annoyed that we're talking so much about Treylon, a player, again, that is not going to be a starter, at least to start the season. So we'll move on here to some more things Brian Callahann had to say. And I really, if you're still with us, stick with us, because I think the most interesting portion of today's episode, the defensive talk we're about to get into, is worth listening to. But first, Brian Callahann was asked about how, they're in shorts right now, and everybody can look good in shorts. How do you parse looking good this time of year? With how can you really tell who is looking good and who is looking bad when you're in shorts, and anybody can look good in shorts? It's not really representative of what real football is. Here was his thoughtful answer.
Look at it more for the process oriented, as far as, do they know what to do? Are they really good in the meeting? Can they take whatever's being taught technically from the meeting room to the field? And then when they get chances to show that they can make a play or two, it's easier in the passing game, obviously, than it would be up front in the trenches. But you want to see guys transferring skills for what they're being taught, from the drill work into the teamwork. It is hard to know the physicality part of it and what that's going to look like, but you kind of have a feel for the guys that are doing things the way you want it done, and they're making progress towards fixing the technique or doing a better technique. That's more what I look at. The physicality part, I think, is for another day and time, but right now is more about the process of in the building, in the meeting room, how they handle all the learning and how they handle the techniques and fundamentals that are being taught, and can they apply it in a team period, even if it is a tempo down team period. Are they where they're supposed to be with their hands, the eyes, all those things? That's sort of how we evaluate those guys right now. Yeah, there's
so not a whole lot to comment on that. I just thought it was worth sharing, the idea that it's from a process standpoint. They're looking for these guys to excel, not necessarily in terms of, making a highlight play here or making a very boneheaded decision here. He's spoken already about, hey, let's make mistakes big, loud, and proud, and then let's not make them again. Let's correct them. So I think that's kind of the phase that they're in. Do we see guys know what they're supposed to do, be where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and constantly showing improvement both mentally and physically? That's where this team is at right now. So that is how you judge who is performing well in May and in June. This next one is, and we're kind of a potpourri of topics here, but I think that these are all worth sharing. Brian Callahann talking about the running backs once again, this tandem of Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard. What's going to be like with these receivers on the field, three deep with Boyd and Hopkins and Ridley. They're demanding a lot of attention from the secondaries that they're going to face. And so that's going to leave some matchup advantages for guys like Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard, both of whom can be more than serviceable in the passing attack. Here is Brian Callahann speaking to exploiting those advantages.
There's you end up getting a lot of one-on-ones, which is, ultimately what the NFL in most passing situations is can you win the one-on-one matchup? And it doesn't necessarily have to mean a wide receiver on a corner. Those one-on-ones can be tight ends on safeties or tight ends on linebackers or backs on linebackers. Those are the matchups that you try to exploit. You try to find whatever matchup you can find that is to your advantage. And a lot of times when you have backs like those two guys, they're going to be the matchup advantage against linebackers most of the time. And so you try to find every which way you can to put them in that space so they can go beat what is likely a lesser athlete. And they both have the ability to do it. And so as we get closer to game planning and less installing of a system, now we have a chance to be a little more free and creative with how we deploy them in the formation and use them against players that we think they can go beat.
And that's something that I'm really excited to see, JT. I with Tyjae in particular, we were talking about their expected usage, and I do think that he's going to be more impactful for this team as a pass catcher than Tony Pollard will be. Man, he's shifty in the open field, and if you can get him on a linebacker or a safety in the box or even a slot corner that he's more athletic than, and he's going to be more athletic than a lot of those guys, he's going to do a lot of damage. And you've seen this firsthand in some Joe Burrow, Brian Callahann offenses, the way that they use those backs and some of their tight ends in that way, exploiting the advantages they get on the inside because of the demand that the outside receivers are, because of the resources the outside receivers are demanding. That can be a really potent thing for an offense like this.
Yeah, especially like, in years past, Brian Callahan, has Joe Mixon, who we've talked about might be on the opposite side of his prime, having Chase Brown last year, utilizing him a little bit, but, especially the tight ends, they haven't really had these super athletic tight ends. And now you're going into a situation with a guy like Chigakonkwo and Josh Wiley, who Will Levis in his press conference today as well, as we'll probably listen to this clip as well, says he brings the juice. So like having those guys around who are super athletic, I think promotes this idea that Brian Callahan is trying to convey, that, man, if we can get these guys in one-on-one, that's what we want to do, because that's how you win in the NFL. And that shift right there, I think, is going to do numbers for this Titans offense.
This next clip from Brian Callahan, he's talking about John Njoku, who we talked about earlier in today's episode. I was expecting when this question was asked for him to give the standard, like, he's doing what we're asking of him. He's really, he's playing hard. He's practicing hard. He's great. And just the standard, like, the response you give for a backup role player type. And that's where it starts. But then you'll hear kind of a phase shift from Brian Callahan here, where he says, by the way, this guy's kind of impressing me. And this is on John Njoku again, second-year player out of Boise State, was a UDFA last year, a Stoney Keeley special. If you know, you know. Here is the John Njoku clip from Brian Callahan.
He's doing everything that you would want a player in that situation to do. He takes it very serious. He's outstanding in the meeting room. He's taken the scheme and he's learned it. I've been surprised that he's a guy that I didn't know much about, and as he's gotten more opportunities, he started to show up, and that's. When you're a guy in that position, that's all you can ask for. And so he keeps stacking good days together. And so, again, we'll see when we get to training camp what that looks like. But he's done everything you could possibly do with an opportunity that he's been given. And that's always good to see.
Yeah, we will see. For him to say he's been surprised, clearly he's not a guy that was on his radar before he got here. But he's stepped up. And again, do I think it is likely he wins the job? No, I do not. But do I think it's significantly more likely today than I did a week ago, based on what we've seen and what we heard today? I think he's got a fighter's chance. And there's a reason why guys like sharp evaluators like our buddy Stoney fell in love with him in the first place, because he has the tools necessary on paper, if all conditions are met, to be a genuinely starting caliber tackle in the NFL. He's serviceable tackle in the NFL. He's just got a ton of developing to do. And if he can do that under Bill and Brian Callahan, again, all the physical requirements are there.
Yeah, I like you said, the requirements are there. It's just putting it together. And as Brian Callahan said, continuing to build those days, especially when you're presumed number one guy like Nicholas Petit-Frere or some of these other guys who are trying to play on that right side of the line, where there are opportunities for them, right? When a lot of them are not out there, like a Nicholas Petit-Frere, this gives every opportunity for John Njoku to go and grab one of those spots. And I think that the way he talked to him today kind of shifted my opinion on how some of these guys may be viewed. And I think a lot of these guys, especially like there's a lot of guys who have really surprised us, right? Dylan Radin's beefing up this offseason. Like there's a guy there. I think they're going to have some opportunities to make this team and have.
Yeah, I agree. So we can keep chugging here. Last one from Brian Callahan. He was asked about the often spoken about year 2 leap that quarterbacks will make. And with Will Levis being a year 2 quarterback and having to learn a new system in year 2, what does he make of the leap that quarterbacks can make in year 2, and whether or not Will Levis will have a harder time doing that because he's having to learn a new offense in the process?
I think there's a lot of improvement that happens when players go from their first to second year. And maybe it might not be necessarily a statistical jump either. They just become so much more comfortable playing the game. There's so much more around them that they're aware of. There's so much more, they're more comfortable in their system, the techniques that are asked, and then what it feels like to play. There's always a big jump, I think, from year 1 to year 2, just like there is sometimes in the season where, that first or second week to that third or fourth week looks a lot different sometimes. So I believe in it. I think there's something to that just because of the experience that they gain from year 1 to year 2. And the system probably, may limit it just a bit because you're not jumping from year 1 to year 2 with the same techniques and coaching. So there might be a little give and take there, but yeah, I think there's a huge improvement usually from the first year to the second year.
No, I mean,
let's hear a little bit from Mr. Year 2 Leap here, and this is Will Levis speaking about tweaking things. We heard last week from his coaching staff that this guy's going through some footwork changes, some arm angle changes, just trying to refine his game, and we asked him about it today. As he says in this clip, quarterbacks are weirdos, and we're changing things all the time. Here's what he had to say.
Are weirdos. We're always tweaking with something. We always feel like something might be off. Like you saw Brady go through handful of different footworks throughout one season, and just ball wasn't coming out the way that I would have liked it to, and we just started looking at what could potentially be the cause of it, and just been messing around with things specifically with my base that I feel like have got me into a good spot.
And this is not a Will Levis day, so we'll use this next and final clip from him to transition to a little Josh Whyle talk. We asked him about Josh Whyle, second-year player, tight end. We spoke last week on the show, JT, about how potentially the tight end one for this team based on the way that this offense is going to utilize their tight ends. He's a bigger body. He's more likely to be used as an inline blocker than Chikakonkwo is. And with the way that they deploy this offense, you may end up, because of that, seeing more of Josh Whyle as an inline guy that leaks out and operates in the seam and is kind of a 50-50 inline and route runner type of guy. That may be what they're looking for. And we asked Will Levis about what he has seen from his buddy, Josh Whyle.
I love Josh. He's a juice guy that we got on this team, and he's come along as one of those guys just this year, which has been cool to see him come out of his shell and just be a really cool and fun presence in the locker room. And he works his tail off. He's prepared every day. He puts a lot on himself. I feel like that's why we're pretty similar. And ever since we came here near as rookies, we've been kind of hip to hip and being able to keep ourselves accountable. So he's made huge strides. You can tell just from the moment he got here for workouts that he really worked on himself and his body and how he was going to approach this year. And it's paid off for him a lot. And I'm looking forward to continuing to see him develop.
If you told me last season that Josh Whyle was going to develop into a juice guy for the Tennessee Titans, was going to come out of his shell, I would have looked at you skeptically for that. I wouldn't have called you crazy, but I wouldn't have thought that was the trajectory he was on. Because last year, JT, it was a lot. And every time we talked to Josh Whyle last year, it was very reserved, very nonplussed answers. Really just kind of, talking. Hey, appreciate you guys for your time. Thank you. This next clip we're going to show from him has nothing to do with football. It has to do with golf. And you know me, I got a shoehorn in a little golf talk. But I think it genuinely is good for the purposes of today's show, because it is a look into what is a more animated, more open, more relaxed version of Josh Whyle that we're seeing, not just in the interviews with him, but in the way that he's playing. So here's Josh Whyle, the golfer.
Golfing buddy, man. Yeah. We just lit what did we play? Old Natchez or how? We just lit that course up the other day.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, he's a good buddy, man.
So who's better?
We go back and forth. I don't want to. We both did not have a good day the other day.
What kind of numbers are you posting?
What's your handicap?
11. I'll shoot between 85 and around 85.
And him?
9 or 18?
18.
And him?
I'll let him answer that question. I don't want to. I think the other day, he can answer
Go ahead,
that question.
come on.
I think the other day he shot like a 111, but that's not him. I've seen him shoot in the 80s. So
he had a particularly bad day.
But we're getting better every day.
How much?
There's more to it.
I am now dying to orchestrate a round of golf with these fellas. Now that I know that they are, and if you guys don't know, I'm a big golf guy. JT, very much not a big golf guy, but I play a lot of golf, and this is me right here. I'm like a 13 to 15 handicapper, depending on how in shape how in form I am. I can shoot an 85 on certain courses. So like, line me up with these fellas. Let's play. I'm going to try to find a way in the next calendar year, maybe this summer, to play golf with these guys. Will, probably not easy to play golf with. Josh, next time I see him, I'm going to ask. I'm going to say, hey, I'm available. If you need a fourth, if you need a partner, let's go. Let's tee it up, fella. Let's play. And then maybe we'll make some content out of it. I don't know. That'd be sick. A little like Hot Read podcast, good style video, but it's just two very mediocre golfers. One's in the media. One is a tight end on an NFL team. That could be self-serving content for me and probably not all that entertaining for you guys, but I'd like to produce it anyways. This next clip is about football, and it's Josh Whyle talking about it's more about Josh Whyle coming out of his shell and being a more relaxed player in year 2. And we asked him about going from being a rookie to entering this portion of the offseason as a guy that's done it before. What's that like? And here's what he had to say.
No, most definitely. I mean, coming in as a rookie, obviously no offseason. And as a rookie, you're just trying to survive. And I think having a full offseason this past year and just being able to, come in the building and being able to breathe a little bit, it's been nice, and I've been loving it. So,
did you?
Okay, so that's Josh Wiley, and those are all of my non-defensive thoughts, JT. We've saved the best for last here on the show, so if folks are still with us live, we appreciate you being here. You've stayed for the best part. 6 clips here from Elijah Molden and Rashad Weaver about this defense, and I'm going to start with Molden speaking to the injury-prone label that he has, frankly, incurred. He's been labeled an injury-prone guy ever since pretty much his rookie season as a Tennessee Titan. And we asked him about what that label can mean for any player, not just himself, and kind of what his journey has been with that. He gave a really thoughtful answer.
Injuries lead to more injuries because in this profession, like, you want to get out in the field, which leads people to go out there and play injured. And then when that happens, people compensate. And then when they compensate, they have another injury. So really, like, I used to be a guy, I was never hurt in college. And I a lot of times I thought it was all on the player, you know what I mean? Like, oh, they're not tough enough, this and that. Now, like, from kind of going through that stuff, I know a lot of the times they can just be victims of a bad situation. So first I changed my mindset, and then, like, I had time this offseason to get my body right, work on the weak areas of my body and make sure I don't have any compensation. So, like, I'm able to go out there and not think about my body, not think about all the positions I have to play. Like, this is the first time I've had a lot of fun playing football.
Is there a
And I didn't film all of it, but he was constantly today talking about how he feels very good right now. It's the best he's felt in a long time. He's just happy to be out here. So that's good. I'm personally not going to – I said this on the show the other day. Man, I think the Titans need help at safety because I don't think there is anybody in that room that can be relied upon to be a starter at the safety position besides Amani Hooker. I think everybody else either is starting caliber, but I don't trust them to stay on the field more than 10, 11, 12 games out of the year, which is not enough, or they're just not up to snuff in terms of a guy you want out there starting at safety. So I would love for Elijah to prove me wrong. Certainly would. And I think he has all the skill in the world to be that guy. It's just, and I'm sure he'd agree with this. Like, it's time to be out there. It's time to prove that you have, a durable enough frame to be a starting NFL player. And this year he's going to look to do that. This next clip, we asked, Joe Rexford actually asked this question to Molden. Hey, we heard last week from Ruhnke about how the Titans' new practice ethos seems to be, if you make a mistake in practice, the position group is not leaving the practice field until we get it right, until we figure it out, until we fix it. That he alluded to that not really necessarily being the case last year or in previous years with the Vrabel regime. We asked Molden, hey, is that a thing that's happening, and is that new? And I think the very beginning of this clip, it gets cut off, but he says, yes, it is. And here's what he had to say.
It is, but I mean, it's just a different way of doing things. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we want to be perfect, but also know that it's not actually going to happen. You know what I mean? But that's our goal. So,
how would you describe?
I was so excited. I was so excited when he got the DC
right
job.
There, JT. And back that up a little bit because I want to make sure we get that first portion of this next clip in there. That is, I know our buddy Zach was getting raked over the coals on the radio by guys like Joe, pointing out that maybe, it is a big deal that this coaching staff is like fixing things. It's not to say that the previous regime didn't fix things, but for multiple players now to volunteer this information that, yeah, this is new, the way that we're approaching fixing our problems on the practice field. It may be more proactive, maybe more aggressive in the way that they are fixing issues. I don't really know what to make of it besides it makes the Vrabel regime not look all that great. And it's encouraging for this regime.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's totally different styles, and it's why that Ravens defense, I think Denard Wilson coming from that kind of more aggressive and more meticulous type of defense. I think that's one of the biggest things that made me excited about Denard Wilson becoming the defensive coordinator. You talk about a Ravens defense that is so detail oriented that is making all of these turnovers and is emphasizing things that maybe are not emphasized by some other teams. And I think when you look at a team like the Titans last year, who were one of the league's worst in creating turnovers, and bringing in a guy like Denard Wilson, who is so detail oriented, and make sure that you are executing correctly no matter what on every single play, like those Ravens defenses have done in the past, I think is a breath of fresh air for these guys, and a big enough change that it's important to comment on it.
Well, and this next clip from Molden is him talking about his new defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. We asked like what his reaction was when that was the signing, and here at the very beginning, he gives you his thoughts on what was going through his mind at the time when he found out, and what he's found out since.
To be perfect, but also know that it's not actually going to happen. You know what I mean? But that's our goal. So
How would you describe him?
I was so excited. I was so excited when he got the DC job, just because you just have to look at his resume, and that kind of speaks for itself. You know, the players he's able to elevate. You know, both in Philadelphia and in Baltimore. You know what I mean? So I knew he would take that philosophy, and we'd have the same type of success. So we just have to put in the work. We trust in our coaching.
Have you already felt that meeting with him? Just like,
yeah.
This is something, you know, the way he approaches it, this is different from guys I've worked with before.
It's the sense of urgency, the attention to detail. You know, if you have one bad rep or one mistake, like, he's not afraid to pull you, and you don't take it personal. Just get it cleaned up, go back out there. So yeah.
Is that a big?
I find that interesting that he, of course, talking about the detail orientedness of Denard, talking about his willingness to pull guys and make them figure something, again, fixing an issue now, being aggressive in the way, proactive in the way that they're doing that. But for him to mention, he says, you look at Baltimore and the guys that he was able to elevate there, not focusing on the stars necessarily as much as it is, hey, look at the floor raiser that a Denard Wilson is for some of these guys that are, you know, have the talent, and they haven't quite panned out, or they haven't quite put it all together, or they haven't really ever been much more than a rotational player in the NFL. But now suddenly under Denard Wilson, hey, this guy is not a star, but a serviceable starter at their position. They are a valuable cog in the machine. I'd imagine a guy like Molden kind of resonates with that, who he has all the self-confidence in the world. He knows that he is capable of being a starter defensive back in the NFL, and has the skills necessary to hang with just about anybody. He's got to, you know, he needs a floor raiser. He needs a guy to get the most out of him. And I'd imagine that's very exciting for guys that are kind of in that, you know, middle of the roster range of, hey, this guy's going to maximize me. And I've seen him do it with guys like me in the past. And that's an exciting prospect.
Yeah, I agree with you. To touch on that a little bit, I think you talk about Denard Wilson being a guy that makes Molden excited, especially considering I think another interesting detail that Molden touched on today was that, you know, that transition from being, as he said, coming kind of out and being a nickel corner, and now making his full transition to more of that safety type role. He talked about last year kind of feeling like a rookie season all over again, you know, having to learn that different style, and now bringing in a confidence builder like Denard Wilson, who is so good and has created so many good and starting caliber safeties. Like you talking about a Geno Stone, who has been the past couple of years was a good starter, but, you know, being elevated to that next level where he gets that second contract and has been a productive guy on the backside. I think that's something that gives Molden the confidence to come into year 2 in this position, not his second year overall, but second year at the safety position. It gives him all the confidence in the world to go out there and want to prove that he is able to start for this team.
Absolutely. This next clip is from Rashad Weaver. We asked him about the new defense, and he kind of took the question in the direction of, let me tell you how I feel about Denard Wilson. Strong feelings from this guy. Let's listen to Rashad.
Fun, aggressive. I mean, honestly, the first meeting we had him, I told him, like, you had me ready to run through a wall. But it's about, he's very hard on us, but he also lets you know when you're doing stuff right. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is, you know, sometimes before that I didn't know when I was doing stuff right, but I know when I'm doing stuff right now, and that makes you want to fix all the mistakes because, you know, it's being noticed.
How much? The most interesting part of that response, before I didn't necessarily know when I was doing things right. I don't know if that's a veiled way of saying we didn't get a lot of positive reinforcement from the past, or whether or not that is genuinely him saying, like, there were times when I didn't quite know what I was doing and I didn't have coaches pointing out, hey, this is right, this is wrong. Whatever it is, again, not great. And for him to feel Like, again, that wasn't necessarily the nature of the question. He took it in that direction. For him to feel like that's necessary to say, I think can kind of speak volumes. Let's go ahead and play this next clip, because he then talked about what's going to be different and how this defense is going to, and this is the most interesting part here to me, the defense is going to look to be dictating terms, dictating the flow of the game to the offense, not the other way around.
It's more of he's got an answer for everything, and it's also how dictated we're going to be. You know, we're not worried about what that offense is going to do. They got to get past us, and we're going to have so many different things for different teams to handle with. But we also got simple things that'll be our core that will be plenty enough for us to get where we need to go. So it'll just be, you know, our choice of hand when we get out there to really have fun and do what a defense should do at a high level.
How much of an back and we're
That's exciting, man. The idea that they're going to be dictating terms, dictating the flow of the game from a defensive standpoint. As he says, don't care what the offense is doing right now. We're gonna be dictating the game the way that we want it to work. We're gonna do our thing, and they've got to get through us. We're not going to be reactive. We're going to be proactive. That's a big difference from some of the way that the Titans defense was playing in the past. Now, at times they were playing reactively because their hands were tied from a personnel standpoint. They didn't have the horses to make it work to dictate terms. You can't dictate terms from a position of weakness. You know, if you're in chess and you're down to just your king, you can't. You're not getting to set the way that the game's going to be played. You're playing reactive. Like, there's just nothing. You're on the run. And the Titans felt like they were on the run a number of times in the past couple of years because of who they had on the field. But there were also times, even more frustrating than that, JT, were the times they had their guys out there, and it's like, what is Elijah Molden or Roger McCreary or whoever doing lined up 7 yards off of this guy when it's 3rd and 3, and they can just show, oh, look at that. They throw a quick in-breaking route, easy first down, he falls down, and it's we're moving the chains. Like, let's play it. Let's play a little bit more proactive than that. Let's not be so reactive to the way that this. They connect on a deep shot, and then we only put 5 in the box, and in the running game, suddenly they break off a 13-yard run right after. It's because you quit reacting. Like, you dictate the terms, have a plan, stick to the plan. That's something the Titans haven't done a whole lot defensively in recent years, and the idea that that's the way they're going to try to do it this year, that has me amped.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. That aggressiveness, that I can't wait to see it in pads as well. The aggressiveness of that Denard Wilson defense just in action is going to be so exciting to watch, especially when they finally get to go up in pads on pads against this wide receiver core. Being able to dictate those terms and bounce back after they miss a play or anything like that is going to be so fun to watch.
All right, this last clip we have today is from Elijah Molden talking about some more of those differences. I asked him, hey, when Titans fans watch week 1, and they're reacting to the game after the game has ended, and it's like, what? This is really different. This part of the defense, really different from what we've seen in the past with Tennessee Titans defenses. What is that going to be? And he gives a fantastic answer, talking about how the safeties are going to be able to play, telling fans they need to learn ball, which it's cosign. JT, I think you co-sign, learn ball. Fans need to learn ball, and he appreciates the fans that do learn ball, and then gives what he thinks is going to be the biggest difference from this defense this year.
Going to play a lot more free. It's going to free up. Our safeties are going to be in position to make plays, especially with the 2 corners we have. So yeah.
When week 1 rolls around, do you think fans, like, they watch that first game, are they going to come away saying that's really different from the defense I'm used to seeing from the Titans, or is it a relatively similar approach to what you guys have been doing?
I hope so. I feel like definitely the fans who know football probably.
Okay.
And that's not a knock on fans who don't. I'm saying fans who are invested in the schemes and can kind of watch some film and kind of break down what type of coverages we run, then yeah, for sure.
In what way do you think it's going to be drastically, like, what's going to be noticeable about the defense? It's different.
That's good. I'm trying to put myself in your guys' shoes.
You can get nitty-gritty with us.
I just feel like we're going to have a lot more vision on the quarterback and be able to make plays. As opposed to kind of going through our reads and worried about the routes. Now it's like more, we're going to be able to have vision on the quarterback. And yeah.
Okay.
And that can on the surface seem like, that lame answer, not an interesting answer. I think that's a really fascinating answer because, again, it seconds and thirds and fourths the idea that they're going to be playing proactively, not reactively. They're going to be playing aggressive, physical, downhill football, and they're going to be looking to affect the quarterback and dictate the terms defensively regardless of what the offense is doing. It's going to be you have to come through us, and you have to do it by the terms that we have set. We're not going to be reacting to the way that this offense throws things at us. That is operating from a position of power. It's operating from a position of this defense. Clearly, they have confidence in what they can and cannot do. And from a scheme standpoint, they're confident that they can do enough things to confuse the offense. I mean, today, Brian Callahann talking about how Denard unloaded the pressure packages today, unloaded the blitz packages, and he threw a lot at us, and it was a tough day for the offense, and it's nice to see that we have that on the Titans team. It's also nice for our offense to have to now try to figure out how to counter that. I'm stoked for all of those things. And I think that every time we ask any of these defensive players, they are giving answers that fit in line with that vision for this defense. And so as the picture starts to come into focus, as we get closer to training camp and to the regular season and see these guys in pads and see them playing in preseason games and in joint practices and against each other, and we start to, we know what the identity of this actually is. It's not a projection. It's not on paper. We see it in real life. As that picture is focusing, I am becoming more and more excited about what we're going to see.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be a fun time around here. No longer, having a lopsided battle like the days of old last year when we're hyping up Arden Key as the next great pass rusher because actually the offensive line just actually sucked. Not saying that Arden Key's a bad player.
I was like, what are you talking about? No, you're talking about the 9 sack days from Arden Key.
Gone are the 9 sack days because there's going to be that back and forth. I think you're going to see a lot more consistency in that section now of practices than you did before.
I agree. All right, that is it from us today. Mandatory minicamp rolls on though, folks. So if you want all the coverage, follow us on social media. At Hot Read Pod is where a lot of this stuff is going. Also at Broadway TM, Broadway Sports Media's Twitter page. But then follow us individually at Easton Freeze, at JT_Ruhnke. We'll be there the next 2 days, and we'll be back on Thursday recapping what we saw on Wednesday and on Thursday. Until then, we appreciate you tuning in with us live or in post. If you haven't subscribed already, wherever you get the show on YouTube or on traditional podcast platforms, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit like, all of those things that can help us out. We appreciate y'all. We'll talk to you again on Thursday. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast.